From the town of Tyngsborough, I'm Roni Kapil, and this is Entering Tyngsborough. Coming up on the podcast, Tyngsborough Fire Chief Wes Russell talks about being one of Tyngsborough's bravest.
They train every day. The on-duty firefighters will train every shift, essentially. The shift commander will pick one of those topics, whether it's tying into a hydrant or throwing ground ladders or working with the aerial ladder, and that'll be their training for the day, and we'll document that. And then we have some other, either the fire academy sends personnel out, and we can train a lot of guys at one time on something, or we, again, will have in-house training.
Chief Russell, welcome to Tyngsborough's front porch.
Glad to be here.
So, for anyone who doesn't know anything about you, can you tell us who you are?
My name is Wes Russell. I'm currently the fire chief at Tyngsborough Fire Department. Born and bred in Tyngsborough. Grew up here. Went to Tyngsborough, graduated from Tyngsborough High School, and have had a pretty good career here as a call, volunteer, part-time, and now full-time firefighter.
So what got you into fire service?
I think that I was attracted to it probably at an early age, and grew up in the 70s, so TV was a major influence probably, and shows like Emergency. I actually wanted, to be a firefighter, but I actually really wanted to be a paramedic, and that was something that, as I went through high school, became, an objective that I actually didn't admit to. I was kind of embarrassed to want to be a paramedic. It didn't seem like a prime calling. I was supposed to go to college and do something a lot more sophisticated, I think, but found my way.
And you were a paramedic for a long time before you switched over to becoming...
Yes, I figured out how to go to EMT school. I had entered college, and it really wasn't getting me what I wanted. I ended up leaving UMass Lowell after 1 year, and went into the National Guard. I was trained as a medic in the Army National Guard, and was able to get myself into an EMT program, emergency medical technician, and started that career really simultaneously as I, in 1984, I finished and got my certification as an EMT in Massachusetts, and started as a young call firefighter at the town of Tyngsborough.
You mentioned, and we've had several conversations over the years, so you grew up in town, and you obviously grew up to the regs to where you are today, and one of the things you just mentioned a few minutes ago of how the department has evolved, people may not know the difference between the on-call and a fully fledged professional department, a service department. Can you kind of shed some light about that?
Sure. The just in general, for example, the National Fire Protection Association, which does a lot of the standards for firefighting across the country and internationally, recognizes three categories of departments that might be helpful there. Career departments, which is what most people are familiar with. There's call or volunteer departments, and then they have what they call combination departments. And we fall into that middle category of a combination department, as many communities, as they transition from a full call or volunteer department towards a more of a career department. So we have gone from when I joined, the only full-time person for the fire department was the fire chief, and even at times he was part-time. But as we've evolved and we started having some staffing during, usually it started out during the weekends when people were away on weekends, and to ensure somebody was in town, somebody was paid to be at the station, and there was less call firefighters around during weekdays as well, because they all had their primary jobs to go to. So we would start staffing then. So it's kind of evolved now. We have both full-time career firefighters. We have part-time or per diem firefighters. They're all paid. And if they respond on calls from their home, they're paid, obviously, for their response as well.
And being a firefighter is not like a regular 9 to 5. Can you explain
Certainly
No, it certainly is not. Can you explain the 24-hour kind of cycle?
Yeah, and that's something that it started out standard for firefighters to do these long shifts. I think really out in the western part of the country, and they had firefighters that were sometimes doing 48-hour shifts.
Oh wow!
But it's kind of made its way east. For a long time here, most of the fire departments in the area did a combination of 10-hour days and 14-hour nights. Some variation of that, but eventually it evolved into most of them are just doing 24-hour shifts. The way it works in Tyngsborough is a full-time firefighter comes in for his shift, works 24 hours from 7 a.m. to 7 a.m., then has 3 days off, and then the cycle repeats. It's a rotating schedule. We call it like an 8-day rotation. So if I'm working my 24 on Monday this week, I'm probably going to be have Monday off next week. I'll be working on 24 on Tuesday next week, obviously with some shifts in between. But so it gives the firefighters the opportunity to have different days off during the week. You're not always working every Monday or Tuesday. It also, like most people, they can tell what day they're going to be working, 6 months from now, because it's just keeps repeating itself in the cycle.
That in itself is a I've talked to some of the staff. They say, yeah, I'm not going to be available that day. I'm on. I'm like, how do you know that? It baffles me.
Yeah.
Folks that are in obviously fire service, law enforcement, and the nursing. I'm not available that day. I'm like, how do you know this? It's like I just know off the top of my head.
So just to elaborate on that, so we have part-time firefighters as well, and they can work either the 10-hour day, the 14-hour night, or the 24-hour shift, and it's really just what they submit to put in to work. I'm not a big fan of the 24-hour shifts. I think we'd be better off with the guys working shorter shifts, especially as we get busier. I worked as a paramedic in the city of Lowell for 30 years, and 24-hour shifts is a long time when you're busy. Yeah. When you're getting up to do calls in the middle of the night. But, I'm not going to single-handedly change industry standard, I don't think.
Could you see a time where Tyngsborough, the schedule shifts?
It's not certainly in the foreseeable future. I think, with health and safety and people taking into account, scientific data on health and safety, that's probably the only thing that'll end up causing a switch in the industry, not just in Tyngsborough. At some point, if it gets busy enough, and there's a lot of evidence pointing to the shorter shifts being healthier and better for the community, but that's the only time that would happen.
So before I get into kind of the nitty gritty of Tyngsborough Fire, somebody listening, watching this episode, let's talk about recruitment. How does one follow that path to become a firefighter or EMT paramedic?
Sure. Most of the people that we have, except for the last few years, were people that originally joined the fire department when we had very few people on duty, and we only had 1 or 2 career firefighters when I took over as chief a few years ago. And so people just joined the call fire department and used it as a kind of part-time job. Now we're able to offer a little bit more than that, but essentially the firefighter has to go through firefighter training, which is at the Massachusetts Fire Academy. They have several locations across the state, and they also offer, for departments like ours, a fire academy that is held on a part-time basis for over a longer period of time. So guys can go a couple of nights a week, have their full-time job, their career, go a couple of nights a week and weekends, and get the same training, same certifications as a city firefighter going to the fire academy full time for 8 weeks. I think it takes a little bit longer, more like 12 to 16 weeks, I think, for our people to get through the same program.
And what sort of qualifications do you and your command staff look into when you're, recruiting?
Sure. We're recruiting a lot, so it's not like we have the opportunity to turn a lot of people away. We're taking, we're trying to attract people in, but certainly, men and women that are healthy and interested in a job that's going to involve a lot of physical ability and labor, and dedicated to helping people and helping the community. We'll give them the training they need. In addition to the fire academy, we also are only hiring people once they obtain their emergency medical technician or EMT. So all of our firefighters are also EMT certified as well. And you have to be an EMT in order to staff the ambulance.
Okay, so they have to be an EMT first before...
We're moving in that direction. We have certainly taken people and put them through the fire academy and then had them go through the EMT training program. That was a common course of action in the past. We're really moving towards looking for people who can get their EMT and then looking for those folks and putting them through the academy. But either way, they eventually have to have both their firefighter 1 and 2 certification, which they get at the fire academy, and their EMT certification before they can actually staff the fire department.
Because ultimately, you guys are going on different sort of calls, fires and medical calls.
Yeah, and the ambulance runs are, about 70% of our overall call volume. And we don't have enough staff on duty that we can have some people that are just dedicated to the engine and are never going to have to get in the ambulance, like many larger departments have. They may have people that are not EMTs who always work on the engine and don't have to worry about staffing an ambulance. In our department, all the firefighters have the ability to staff the ambulance and often do.
Before we get to the ambulance, you mentioned training. How often does the fire department, once the firefighter is certified, they get their certification through the Commonwealth, how often do you folks train, and what does that look like?
We train every day, really. The EMT training and certification process is more structured, so they have to recertify every 2 years, and there's specific training requirements. So those are done through a combination of online training through a learning management system, our own in-house training for practical skills training, as well as training that we get through our affiliation with Lowell General Hospital and a physician medical director that provides case review and training as well. So that's kind of structured to maintain their EMT certification. The firefighter training doesn't require recertification. We do recertify for hazmat first responder level for all firefighters, but we track our training. It's more, I don't want to use the term regulated, but for example, the Insurance Services Organization has their standards as an accrediting agency as to how they, what they expect for training. And we, like most departments, train to meet those standards. There's certain skills that are required through the National Fire Protection Agency in your initial training that we make sure we train on a regular basis, so we can go in and identify that, placing ground ladders on a building that's on fire, as a skill, say, is going to be done, at least every couple of years as a training thing, regardless of how many times they actually do it in the field, that kind of thing. So they train every day. The on-duty firefighters will train every shift, essentially. The shift commander will pick one of those topics, whether it's tying into a hydrant or, throwing ground ladders or working with the aerial ladder, and that'll be their training for the day, and we'll document that. And then we have some other, either the fire academy sends personnel out, and we can train a lot of guys at one time on something, or we again will have in-house training. This month, in fact, is our driver operator training. So we focus on safety, but driving the larger apparatus, they'll be doing during the shifts, they'll be training on our SOPs as far as operating the vehicles. And every Saturday in the month of May, there's going to be a group out driving the trucks around through a cone course, practicing backing up, practicing position in the vehicles, and that kind of thing, just as an example.
And you guys are always, and whenever I walk
always training.
Whenever I walk into the station, there's always some sort of training. I recall in the wintertime, bucket of cold water and a bunch of tools. And they said, well, dig your hands in there.
Yeah.
So it's
for the cold water rescue training.
Yes,
yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
And the, certainly, like I said, the medical calls are 70% of our calls. Actual structure fires is a low percentage of our calls. And there are those, low frequency, high risk skills that we need to focus on and train on because they don't get to do them on a regular basis during the normal course of events.
Right. So you mentioned the ambulance service. Let's talk about that.
Sure.
How did it come into being? Because for the longest time, Tyngsborough didn't have an ambulance service, and then ultimately it became part of, the Tyngsborough Fire Department. And how does the service meet the needs of the community?
Yeah, prior to 2016, the town was serviced by a private ambulance provider. Different ones over the years. It's certainly the years that I've been there. And one of the challenges we had was, again, needing more staff. And at the time, through most of the 2010s, we had 2 people on duty, and we could rely to a great extent on what we call callbacks, where the tone goes out. We had radio pagers, and firefighters are alerted that there's a call, or a fire or something, and they would respond in and get the vehicles and respond and supplement the 2 people that were on duty. That, as time goes on, that becomes less of an opportunity for us. In the town of Tyngsborough, a lot of the community is more professional people as opposed to people who run, the general store or work at the lumber yard or around during the day or are interested in being a firefighter part-time.
Sure. They
have their careers, they have their families, they don't have the time to do it. So the call aspect of being a firefighter is something that is just diminishing over time, and certainly we're seeing that, and other communities are seeing that as well. In order to, the ambulance was identified, and the ambulance is run as an enterprise fund as a way to increase the staffing of the fire department without costing the town money. And by running the ambulance and bringing it on 2 more people to have 4 people on at all times, we were doubling the staffing of the fire department, and the ambulance enterprise fund supports those 2 firefighters still to this day as well. So that and 4 is kind of an important number for us.
Why is that?
When you go to either a structure fire or any kind of incident where there's a hazardous area, especially where firefighters are going to be entering an atmosphere and have to wear breathing apparatus, self-contained breathing apparatus, or their air masks. Just good practice is to have somebody outside standing by, ready to assist firefighters in that dangerous atmosphere if they need it. It's actually an OSHA regulation that we call it the 2-in, 2-out regulation. You never go in just with one. There's always at least 2 people, buddies, entering a hazardous atmosphere. And there's always going to be 2 people with the same protective breathing apparatus and protective equipment ready to go in to assist them if one of them has some kind of an emergency or gets into trouble or can't get out or something like that. That's the bare minimum. There's much more that needs to be done at all of these scenes, but if we pulled up to a building fire and someone needed rescue, in order to effect that rescue, we need to have 4 people minimum ready to go at the scene to be able to do that.
So, can you walk through the public? Because, you've done this job, you know this job well. Member of the public, they see that the fire department does a fire, and it's like, all right, they're going to put the fire out. From your perspective, having done this job a long time and now obviously in the command structure, can you walk me through when you guys respond to a structural fire, and how do you manage that?
So when we respond to a fire, is the shift commander is responsible for determining what course of action they got to take. He's going to do a scene size up and determine what the plan is going to be. He needs to see what evidence there is of any fire in the building, whether there's fire or smoke showing from the outside. He's going to do a 360-degree survey of the outside of the building, looking for the location and size of the fire. Talk to bystanders, try to determine if there's anyone in the building that needs immediate rescue, and then make a determination whether we're going to send firefighters into the building to try and contain the fire, whether it's going to be a defensive operation, we're going to stay outside of the building and use hose streams from the outside. And sometimes what we do is a transition where we may hit fire from the outside first and then quickly try to move inside. Certainly life safety takes a priority. One of the issues we've had more recently is, arriving at the scene of a building fire with 4 personnel. I arrived at the same time, fortunately, so I did the 360 size up and everything. But there was someone that needed to be rescued. There was fire in the house. We were able to send 2 firefighters in to search for that victim. We had 2 firefighters outside with SCBA. One of them is running the pump on the truck. The other one is feeding hose through the door as they advance down the hallway. And when I did my 360, I could see that the fire was burning through the wall at about the base of the first floor level. There was obviously fire in a partition, and it was probably getting moving up the wall into the attic. It was not a lot of fire when we got there. But through the course of focusing on the rescue, which they effected pretty quickly, there was no firefighting being done during that time. And by the time we had the victim out and loaded into the ambulance and were ready to go back into the building, now the attic was involved and fire burned through the roof. We did the most important thing. We just couldn't do all the jobs because we only had 4 people there initially. Excuse me.
Yeah, sure. And a fire is moving pretty quickly in a short amount of time, right?
Yes. In fact, there's a lot of data now that tells us that fires with today's furnishings and wall coverings and floor coverings, all being mostly made out of plastic, fire grows dramatically faster than it did back in the 50s and 60s and maybe even in the 70s. And there's actually, you can look online at different comparisons showing what they call legacy furnishings and the rapidity of the fire growth versus today's furnishings and how fast it grows. But yeah, so time, over time, things are happening quickly. So that's why they want, 10 firefighters there. So it's a challenge with a small department to be able to do that, and we do rely on mutual aid.
Yeah, so let's talk about mutual aid. So, how do they work, and how does your department collaborate with the surrounding communities during emergencies? You've mentioned in past conversations that we are very lucky to be a member of 2 fire districts. Yes.
So, in Massachusetts, the state is divided up into fire districts where we have very regular collaboration among the departments and the chiefs. We're in District 6, and I meet with them on a regular basis. Being on the New Hampshire border, we also are affiliated with the what's called the Border Area Mutual Aid Association, which is multiple departments from Massachusetts and New Hampshire in this area that meet. And we have standing agreements for mutual aid with all of these departments. We have with our departments we work with the most, such as Drake and Westford and Dunstable. We have agreements where, for example, if we have a report of a building fire, Dunstable is getting called automatically to bring their tank truck. Much of the town, we need to bring our own water. We don't have hydrants available everywhere. And that has become an important asset to us. We have mutual aid agreements with Drake and Westford where, we have a working fire or a report of a fire, and we can call for auto aid from them where they're going to respond an engine to supplant us, maybe even before we get there and confirm that there's a fire. If we know that we're getting good reports and it's during a weekday and we know there's not a lot of call firefighters around or something like that. So, we've tried to enhance those agreements and work them so that, we increase that response. And we do the same with them. Drake will call us very quickly on a fire. And, even before, it used to be that a fire had to advance in alarms, right? It'd go from first alarm, second alarm. So second alarm would bring in more people. Third alarm would bring in more people. And we've kind of enhanced our mutual aid agreements to, in the early stages, get some mutual aid coming quicker before we even advance alarms, if that makes any sense.
It makes sense to me. Hopefully it makes sense to people watching, listening. And obviously the response is quicker, correct?
In those cases, yes. So instead of waiting until we get on scene, confirm there's a fire, and then go to a second alarm, for example, we've arranged with these departments to so they have an expectation of what we're calling them for, where even before we get on scene, if we have a reliable report, so there's a police officer that's there saying, there's smoke coming out of the building, I can call and say, okay, start Drake on auto aid. And they're already responding before we get there and confirm whether we need them or not.
Yeah, and then oftentimes, too, if you guys are at a fire, and a surrounding community is coming to Tyngsborough and just standing by the station, so in case there's another emergency elsewhere in town.
Exactly. So the way we've set the alarm structure in Tyngsborough is that by advancing, we have a working fire level, which is between a first alarm and a second alarm. And it doesn't get a whole lot more firefighters to the scene, except for maybe those auto aid situations. But it starts bringing that next level into town to cover the center station. And that does two things. One, they're there to respond to other emergencies that are happening while we're at the fire. But also, it brings them that much closer. Typically, if we called a second alarm for the engines to come from their station in another community to get to the fire, it's going to take 20 or more minutes before that happens. What we're doing is bring them in to cover the center of town, and if we need to go to that next alarm, they are either already in the center of town or already in their trucks moving towards town when we get to that next alarm, and hopefully shortening the time for mutual aid.
So a lot of preventative measures that you're doing.
There's as a fire chief or anybody that's in charge of an emergency incident, there's a lot coming at you at the same time, and you're doing a lot of juggling.
And in addition to your role as the fire chief, you're also the emergency management director for the town.
Yes.
And what does that entail?
So I became the emergency management director in 2002. I think I was a lieutenant or maybe a captain at the time. I don't recall exactly, but shortly after 9/11, the country was changing the way they look at civil defense, is what we used to call it. And I think I was appointed as a civil defense director then. And now it's kind of evolved with the Department of Homeland Security they developed. And so the town, one of the steps was appointing me as emergency management director. And at the time, I was the director of the paramedic service run by the hospitals in Lowell, and I was doing hospital emergency preparedness for the hospital that I worked at. And I also
So you were doing a whole lot.
So I was involved in it. I was interested in emergency management, emergency preparedness. I was assigned to be one of the coordinators for the Y2K preparedness. Remember Y2K
Yes,
at the hospital,
yes.
and we thought everything was going to shut down on midnight.
Yes.
And so that I started to develop that background. When the opportunity came up for the town, I was excited about it. It's I won't say part time. It's really no assigned hours to it. It was a stipend position. But I certainly learned a lot about over the years. It's given me the opportunity to interact not just with other paramedics and fire personnel, but emergency management directors from the other communities who have, at the time was usually people who are much older than me and have a lot of experience. So I usually just sat and listened a lot when I got into those groups. But and I've retained that position. It's technically separate from my job as the fire chief. It's a different department. Technically, I reported then to the Board of Selectmen and now to the town manager as the emergency management director. I don't know. It's an important role, certainly. It's interesting. Emergency management is about planning. It's nothing like being a fire chief. It's a lot of not exciting work, looking at resources, plans, coordinating with the state's resources, being a point of contact. A lot of what I have done as emergency management is organizing the financial records for reimbursement from FEMA after we've had like a severe storm or something like that. Emergency management isn't really exciting work, but it's important stuff, and I've always enjoyed that part of the job.
I have so many thoughts about that, and we've talked over the years about emergency management. When it comes to the public and outreach, when it comes to fire prevention and preparing for inclement weather events, what have you, what sort of things is the department doing in town?
So outreach is a really important part of our mission. We're here for life safety primarily, both EMS, fire safety, certainly. But a big part of our mission is to promote safety by the public. And, safety is all of our responsibility. We have participated for many years prior to me becoming chief in a program. We have a recurring grant where we have what's public and life safety educators, I think is the actual title. We have 2 officers that are certified, but they kind of direct that program, and it's usually targeted mostly at school-age children, getting into the schools and providing programs on fire safety and life safety education, and also with the seniors. But we look for opportunities to do that at public events. We've had our annual safety day every fall, and we're participating.
It's twice.
Well, the health department has a health fair in the spring that we've always participated in as well. But we kind of push the safety day and involve the health department there as well. But and any events, the block party, any opportunity to be out there and enhance our contact with the community and provide that guidance. The other part of that, you brought up emergency management. This year in emergency management, actually it's been a year now that we've had a CERT team, a community emergency response team, which is resident volunteers who form as a group have received and are ongoing receiving training in different aspects of emergency response to kind of supplement our public safety personnel.
How has that been like in its first year?
Oh, it's been fantastic. I just want to go back at it's something I wanted to do as emergency management for a long time. It's under a Citizen Corps grant that has been available for years. It's been a challenge, though, because I knew I didn't have any more time in my life to dedicate to it. So one of the challenges was trying to find somebody to assist with that and be a team leader and kind of get it going. But one of the gaps that we've always had in emergency management is when we've needed to do any kind of public sheltering. And that's usually been a severe storm. We have power outages that last for days, if not weeks. And the need in Tyngsborough is low compared to other communities, but it is still there. And we've relied on certainly firefighters to, help with staffing shelters. We've relied on the Regional Medical Reserve Corps. They've been fantastic, but they're also being pulled by all the other communities. And that was really the most important thing, I think, about getting a CERT team together was that's the biggest gap that needed to be filled. But we're identifying lots of opportunities for the CERT team to participate. We have a group of about 20 people. I never dreamed it would be that big.
Wow.
They're committed and dedicated. They come to monthly trainings, and it's been a success so far. I look forward to it growing.
That's wonderful. What would you say, in your shoes, sitting in the hot seat, is currently the biggest challenge in the Tyngsborough Fire Department?
Our building. Our facilities and our staffing are our challenges right now. We have pretty decent equipment. We went through a period there for a few years where we were dealing with some older apparatus. We've been able to make that happen with the support of the community to kind of meet some of those priorities with new apparatus. We still have issues with, the tank truck that we rely on so heavily is 30 years old, 31 years old. Our aerial ladder is 28 years old, but they're still running and still going strong. Our facility, the main station, the Kendall Road Fire Station, is undersized and does not meet the functional needs of today's fire service. We've never built a fire station in Tyngsborough that was meant to house firefighters. The center station was built in the 50s. It was occupied in 1960, and it was really designed to house fire apparatus, a small training room, and a small office for the part-time fire chief at the time. We've, through the Firefighters Association, added on to the building multiple times over the years. But we've never had built a fire station that was designed to house firefighters, have area for firefighters to spend the night on the 24-hour shifts or the overnight shifts, to cook meals, do training, have appropriate restrooms, and then the biggest challenges are really more recent. When I say more recent, I mean, in the last couple of decades, the recognition of the danger to firefighters there is in hazardous materials that they encounter through the course of the job, whether it's, smoke that gets into their protective gear, chemicals in foam, whatever the case is. Modern fire stations are designed to not allow the vehicle exhaust into the living quarters of a fire station. They're designed to separate places where you store protective gear and other equipment that is exposed to carcinogens and other hazardous materials, places for decon of that, separation of firefighters' living quarters from those areas. And our station just isn't adequate to do that. That has been the primary issue that I've tried to deal with for 8 years. It looks like we have an opportunity to move forward now with architectural design at the upcoming town meeting, and I'm really hoping that moves forward and we get a new station built as soon as possible. We're way beyond the need for that at this point. 2 independent architectural firms did analysis about 2018 and 2024, so 6 years apart, came up with the same conclusion. Current space is about 25% of what our actual needs are. So it's something that has to be done. So that's a big challenge. And we continue to have staffing challenges. That's something we're trying to address a little bit at a time. When I became chief, my objective has been to maintain the combination nature of our department and try to rely as much as we can on call part-time firefighters. The ability to do that diminishes year by year. The only answer to that is increasing on-duty staffing. And I've tried to do that as slowly as I can, but it has to be done. I think, if you had some of the firefighters in here, they'd, feel much more sternly, we need more guys on duty. I know the community, we're trying to be financially and fiscally responsible to the community and try to provide a service without, suddenly tripling the, staffing of the department. I've been trying to, walk that line and try and grow the department at a pace that is consistent with the town's growth and, the town's ability to support it.
Chief, you mentioned earlier about the occupational hazards firefighters face. Do you have any concerns about those, types of hazards, the smoke, the forever chemicals that, that are being highlighted now? That
Sure. Yeah, the forever chemicals or PFAS or PFOS, depending on what we're talking about. Yeah, that's the latest thing for us to be concerned about. We've known for years that firefighters have a much higher rate of cancer than most other occupations, if not all. We've learned how to try and prevent that exposure as much as possible over the years with, how we treat our, our protective equipment. We have extractors, which are big, heavy-duty washing machines that are made to draw the products of combustion out of the turnout gear. Now in the stations, when I was a firefighter in the 80s, it was a badge of pride to have, a dirty helmet and dirty gear and smell like a fire everywhere you went. Now we look at it for what it is. It's just not too bright, and we make it a point, the firefighters have 2 sets of protective gear so that after a fire they can get their gear that they was used clean and have another set of gear to use. So we've always known that there was that danger. The problem is there's many things that our fire station just doesn't allow us to do as far as that separation of the firefighters and those hazards. When we talk about the PFAS, I'm still trying to figure out, and I think, the world is trying to figure out, what is the risk? We know there is a risk. Is it a long-term chronic risk? Is there an acute risk? Is the PFAS from firefighter foam, the greatest risk? Now we're finding out that the structural protective gear that we wear to protect us has PFAS in it in order to protect us. So
did not know that. What
is the breakdown of that in that gear? Is it dangerous, or is it only dangerous if the gear is damaged? What is the exposure? Those questions aren't really answered yet. There's a lot of people who believe there's a lot of exposure and something needs to be done. They make PFAS-free protective gear.
Okay.
The difference is it costs 3 times as much and lasts about a third as long as NOLA. So right now our protective gear that we use needs to be replaced every 10 years.
Wow.
Regardless of how it looks. 10 years, its life is over. PFAS-free gear, I understand, only lasts 3 years. And I know it costs 3 times as much as the other gear. It may be the answer. I'm not sure it is. There's a lot of balls in the air. We need to see where they fall.
That is fascinating.
And once we figure that out, it'll be the next thing. So,
right.
But yeah, there are concerns right now. So there's a PFAS, which is kind of intangible. How bad is it? We know it's bad. We don't know how bad. We don't know if the gear is that bad. But we have the other stuff, the diesel exhaust, the fumes for, the products of combustion from being at a fire, whether it's an inside fire or an outside fire. It's in our gear and in our clothing. And we don't have facilities that are conducive with just keeping that stuff separated, and decon facilities and a flow where the firefighter can return to the station, separate themselves from the contaminated gear, get to a shower before they enter the bunk area, and never have to worry about contaminating the clean side. That's how fire stations are set up these days, and ours is nowhere near that.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So am I concerned? I think about it all the time.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just glad we haven't had anybody, that is suffering from any of those things right now. But
I'm relieved to hear that. That's good.
it's we're beating the odds, I think.
Sure. And they're going out and facing these hazards. What are you guys doing, for, self-care after that? That, just kind of the long term from being exposed to all these occupational hazards.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure what you're asking. In the short term, we're more aware of it now. So, for example, we have these things now in all the apparatus called firefighter wipes, where we actually, at the scene before getting back in the apparatus, we'll clean your face, clean your arms or your hands wherever it is exposed, so that you're not leaving that stuff on you until you get a chance to get in a shower. That's one small method. Many departments are actually bagging their gear at the scene so that they're not even bringing it back into the fire engine while it's contaminated. There are many departments doing that now. We don't have the capacity to do that at this point and have other gear available, but it's, and it is a challenge for someone like myself to try and, look at these different procedures that are coming into play and say, okay, is this something we should start doing right away, or is there a better option for us, or is there, what option can we afford to do? In the long term, I guess I'm not sure. Maybe you can ask that a different way, but I'm not sure what you're looking for there.
Well, that was a perfect response. I know there are other places where, wellness is key, and I know there's some wellness program obviously within the town of Tyngsborough. Some firefighters go into a sauna to detox. I didn't know if the folks here in town were doing that. So I just
yeah, I've heard that rumor. There's a couple of places that were trying to get saunas built into their fire stations. I think the science didn't support the theory that it was detoxifying, so that was a fail. I'm sure they exist, but
understood.
But yeah, there are wellness programs that are both through through Maya, through the state, but also through the Department of Fire Services and the Fire Academy, and some guys take advantage of those programs. Sometimes we're able to have someone come out and talk to us, but it's something probably that we need to do more of.
As we kind of wrap up our conversation, how can the public support the fire department and contributes to its success?
Geez, certainly we want to be able to communicate our needs to the town, as far as the needing a new fire station and the importance of that, and improving our facilities. So coming to town meeting and supporting us, but at the same time, we just look for opportunities to engage. If you have a community group or something like that, a citizen group that meets, and we can come and answer questions and talk to the group and provide some education, we want to hear from you. We'd love to engage more.
Wonderful. And Chief, just to get more really deep about who you are, people know who you obviously have been in town a long time. You grew up here, you live here, you're down the street from work. What's something that people may not know about you?
Jeez, what do people not know about me? I guess, it's something that I think about more these days. My father passed a few months ago, and
sorry for your loss.
I was in the National Guard, as I said. My father was an Air Force veteran. My son is an Army veteran, Afghanistan veteran.
Also, and he's a firefighter too.
And a firefighter.
Both your sons are.
And one thing I learned from my parents, both of my parents spent, as long as I can remember, most of their adult lives supporting veterans in this community one way or another. And if that's something that is becoming more important to me. So I've been involved more with the American Legion, and I brought my father on an honor flight to see the monuments in D.C. a couple of years ago, and now I'm a regular volunteer with that organization. So, yeah, maybe that's something that's a little personal that I have started to get involved with a lot. And my wife, we both are involved more with that
with
now.
the reef,
and she started the Reefs Across America. So, yeah, that's of late that's become a focus, supporting our veterans.
Chief Wes Russell, Tyngsborough Fire Department Fire Chief. Thank you so much for coming on the program today.
Thanks for having me.
And that is all the time that we have for this episode of Entering Tyngsborough. You can learn more about your town's government by visiting the town's website at tyngsboroughma.gov. For the town of Tyngsborough, I'm Roni Camille. Thanks for watching and listening. Until next time, wishing you the best of goodbyes.